Hello and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things true crime. Now before going any further, I just want to apologize about the grainy situation, and if you may hear any sounds in the background, I apologize. The weather is quite bad today, but I needed to get this video done, so I am here sitting down filming for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Ntshongwana, also known as the Durban ex-killer or the ex-murderer. It is a serial killer case and it's just mind-blowing, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time. We're just simply going to get straight into today's story. So the story begins on the 20th of March 2011 as Peter Goldie was driving down Kenyan Howden Road, which is in Montclair in Durban, at around 9:30 p.m. The night had begun as a pretty peaceful and joyful night, and in fact Peter was on his way back home from church when he saw from a distance a silhouette of a very big man holding a stick, and he saw the man beat down on something on the ground, and from afar he really thought that this man was either killing a snake or beating down on an animal. But soon as he drove past the scene, he noticed that he was completely wrong. He saw that the silhouette that he had seen on the ground actually belonged to a person, and that he had just witnessed a murder. The victim's body was lying on the pavement and his head had been severed and it was lying on the side of the road. So before he could drive by, he saw this big man get into his car and drive away in a silver grayish car. But Peter, of course, did not stop right next to the scene. He drove past the scene, past the body, and then stopped a couple of meters away and then called the police. Upon arrival on the scene and just witnessing or seeing what the victim's body looked like, police initially believed that this was a muti killing. So a muti killing is actually a ritualistic killing where people kill in order to take the body parts of other people. So they take the body parts of their victims and then they perform some ritual using those body parts. So either it is a wealth ritual, a health ritual, whatever ritual, it's just witchcraft basically. And whether we'd like to believe it or not, these ritualistic killings are actually quite common. So they thought that this was a ritualistic killing or a muti killing because the victim's head had been severed. So they thought that he wanted, or whoever this perpetrator was, wanted to take the victim's head, but then he saw Peter driving by, so then he just got in his car and fled. The victim was later identified as Nkosi Lebeletu. As the police were still investigating this case, the very next day they received a phone call reporting that another body in similar condition had been found in Lamontville. This victim had also been decapitated and his head was found in a bin about 100 meters from where his body was found. This victim was also identified, and he was identified as Paulos Hlongwa. Paulos at the time was living with his wife Fikile and their son Vusimuzi. He and Fikile had been together since they were in standard 6. Fikile described Paulos as a smart boy, and that at some point during their school tenure, Paulos was actually the captain of the school's football club, the school's soccer club. On this particular day, Paulos didn't want to go to work, but then Fikile ended up talking him into going to it. His shift began at 2 p.m. and normally would end at 10 p.m. So when 11 p.m. rolled around and he still wasn't home, this was around the time when Fikile started getting a bit worried. She then received a knock on the door and was met by police who informed her that Paulos was deceased, and she states that the police were not nice nor were they respectful at all. She claims that they said something along the lines of, "Your man is dead, he has been killed by the side of the road," which is absolutely not a way in which you should break down the news of somebody's death to their significant other or to anybody for that matter. They did not have a sense of sensitivity and respect for the matter. She said that as soon as she heard the news, her entire mind completely went blank. She later went to the scene where she identified Paulos using his clothes because the police that were at the scene could not bear to show her the state in which her husband's body was found in, and I'm thankful for those police at the scene, because the ones that broke the news down to her were not really respectful, and I'm pretty sure if it were up to them, they probably would have shown her the state that Paulos was in at that moment. So on the 22nd of March, it had been 2 days since the very first body was discovered, and local police realized that they did not have adequate resources to research this matter by themselves. And that's when Officer Naidu decided to call Colonel Jason Gray for some assistance. They feared that the killer would strike again, and so they formed a task team that would help maybe profile the killer and of course coordinate the cases and hopefully find a pattern of some sort so that this killer could be stopped before he struck again, because clearly he was out to kill. So like I said, they wanted to act fast and stop him before his next kill, but unfortunately on the 24th of March they received yet another call reporting that another body in similar conditions was found in Umbilo. This victim's name was Simon Ngidi, and he had been attacked the same exact way that the other two victims had been, so the modus operandi was exactly the same. Simon was an unsuspecting random man who was walking alone at night. He was a black man, he had been decapitated, and he also had deep wounds, indicating that the attacker was a very strong person, a very strong man. And he also had defense wounds on his arms, which indicated to the police that he must have tried to shield himself from the attack using his body, using his arms, but unfortunately the attacker still managed to rob him of his life. So at this point the police had failed to stop him from killing, and he had now officially become a serial killer. So at this point police needed help. They noted that they needed some leads in order for them to be able to successfully stop this man, and they knew that somebody must have seen something, or at the very least heard something, and so they started looking for witnesses. They came across a woman who lived across the street from where the second victim, Paulos, had been attacked and killed. She said that she heard some screams that night, and so she decided to take a peek from inside her house, and that's when she saw a big muscular guy, but that was about all that she saw. Some security guards who worked the night shift at a place that's not so far from where the attack took place also saw him, but they did not see his face. They said that they saw him walk towards a silver or grayish car, change some clothes, take out an orange plastic bag or an orange sack, walk back to where the victim was lying, picked up something, put it in the orange sack, went back to his car, put it in the boot, and then drove away. But again, that was about all that they could give to the police. They couldn't give the police his number plate or what his face looked like. That was about all. Apart from these witnesses, someone also came forward to the police claiming that he had been attacked but survived the attack earlier that night. So we don't have the victim's name, but just to make this story a bit comprehensible, I'm gonna name him Sipho. So Sipho was walking alone at night when he noticed a silver car kind of stalking him and following him around. He was wary of this, and he paid attention to this because he was walking in a kind of unsafe part of town or unsafe part of the neighborhood, so he was kind of like checking it out, but he didn't want to make it seem obvious. So he saw the car drive past him. The car then made a U-turn and drove back to him, and at this point Sipho crosses the road over to the other side. Then the silver car parks, and a big muscular guy comes out of the car, walks towards Sipho, accusing Sipho of giving his daughter AIDS. Of course Sipho was like, AIDS? I don't even know you. And that's when this big muscular guy took out an axe, tried to hit Sipho with it, but missed, and Sipho ran for his life. Thankfully, he survived and didn't lose his life that night. So Sipho came forward to the police with this story, and thankfully he also remembered that this particular car had an Eastern Cape registration. And remember, we're in KwaZulu-Natal, so this kind of stands out. So once police had figured out that this man is driving a silver car with an Eastern Cape registration, the silver car was, at this point, was all the witnesses were mentioning. So police knew that they were definitely looking for a silver car, and now from Sipho's story they knew that the car had an Eastern Cape registration. So they started visiting the different petrol stations in the neighboring areas, the nearby areas from where all these attacks took place, but unfortunately they simply could not find this silver car with an Eastern Cape registration. So of course, with something like this happening, it's inevitable that word is going to get around, and eventually the media will start publishing some articles talking about this. On the 27th of March, an article about an ex-killer was released. The media stated that this ex-killer was apparently avenging his daughter who had been raped and then infected with AIDS. And at this point, the killer started getting some supporters. People were mentioning how they would do the same to avenge their daughters. They understand him, they resonate with him, and of course they're no better than him, because if they were in the same situation, they would be doing the same. And as you can imagine, this left the victims and the victims' families feeling very isolated and alone, and you know, they didn't really have that much support from the media and the public. It's just disgusting to me that people are comfortable with defending a murderer without even knowing the full facts of what's going on. They're comfortable with resonating with a murderer and justifying his actions without even having some sort of regard for the victims' families and for the fact that he is taking actual lives from people. He's affecting so many families. A newspaper also published an article about a man named Sifiso Gamala, who claimed to have also been attacked by the same man on the night of the 21st of March. So police didn't know anything about Sifiso. They didn't know his story. They hadn't heard from him at all because Sifiso had not come forward to the police with his story. But Sifiso claimed that he had been walking alone at night when he saw a big guy come out of a silver car with an orange plastic bag that had an X in it. So at this point, Sifiso starts running away, and this man pulls the X out, throws it at him, but thankfully he missed. So again, Sifiso lived to tell the tale. Now, what made Sifiso's story credible to the police was that Sifiso mentioned the orange sack, the orange plastic bag. At this point, this was classified information. This information had not been released to the media, unlike the silver car and the AIDS story. This was just known by the police and the witnesses, so this made Sifiso's story stand out and definitely seemed credible to the police. After reading the newspaper article, yet another witness came forward to the police. This was a man from Umbilo. So this man said that on the night of the 24th of March, which was the night that Simon was killed, he heard some screams outside. So that's when I don't know if he got outside, but then he yelled at whoever was out there, and he saw this big guy start running and running and running. He jumped over a fence and he had completely vanished. So he stated that despite this guy's size, he was very fast, but despite his speed, he also managed to get a glimpse of his face. And so because of this, he was able to help the police draw up an identikit, which was later distributed. Another witness came forward to the police after reading the newspapers or after seeing the story about the ex-murderer all around, and he remembered that he had an altercation, a similar altercation, or rather a weird altercation, with a man that fits the description of this big burly man that's been described by the media. So this altercation happened in Yellowwood Park, and this man was at his girlfriend's house. So he says that this big muscular guy comes to him. He had his hands in his jacket, and he just had this feeling that there was something inside the jacket, but he couldn't tell for sure. So this big burly man approaches him and he's like, "Do you know who I am?" So of course the guy responds, "No, I don't know you. Maybe you'd like to tell me who you are." And that's when this guy just gives him this blank death stare before saying, "I don't go to war in front of women," and then he walked away. So of course this was weird, this was strange, but after this his girlfriend then told him that this was the same guy that attacked her brother a year prior. So in November of 2010, her brother was also attacked by the same man. She says that her brother was walking alone at night when this man asked him for directions. So the brother didn't live in the area, and he told the guy that, "I don't live in this area." But that's when this guy got out of the car, grabbed a baton and then started beating and beating and beating this guy. This attack was so terrible actually that the brother actually had to be hospitalized. And what's even crazier is that this big burly man did not live that far from this girlfriend's house. He actually lived quite close. They were separated by just one house, so there was just one house in between them. And I don't know why they didn't report the guy. I don't know why this guy was still walking around freely. But anyway, this article just spooked this guy enough for him to reach out to the police. He was afraid of calling the police to his place or his girlfriend's place, and so he ended up meeting with the police at a shopping center. He got inside their car and he told them the entire story. He laid down all the facts, and so the police pulled out this identikit and showed it to him, and he was certain, he was 100% certain that the man on the identikit was the man that he had this altercation with. And so from then on, the police drove with him to go point out his house. He pointed out the house that this man was allegedly living in, and it was in Yellowwood Park. The police then later came to know that the man living in that house went by the name of Joseph Ntshongwana, and he was a former Blue Bulls rugby player. So Joseph Ntshongwana is the son of Philina or Philina Letaka and the legendary Liston Ntshongwana, and he has a sister called Luleka Ntshongwana. He came from an upper middle class background with rugby running in his family. His dad, like I said, is Liston Ntshongwana, who was a former Springbok rugby player. He was also a government advisor, a diplomat in the former Transkei, and then he later went into business. Needless to say, they were doing pretty well in their family. He came from a loving family by all accounts, and he also had a good relationship with both his parents. Those who knew him and played rugby with him described him as a gentle giant who just absolutely loved rugby, and that he was also a joker in the locker rooms. But some people also described him as a bit of a loner. They said that he was quiet and withdrawn most of the time. So you know, two things can be true at the same time. So maybe he was quiet and withdrawn, but then he would make some of these jokes to deflect from that. I don't know, but yeah, some described him as quiet, some described him as a joker. He played for the Blue Bulls from the years 1998 to 2001, and in addition to the Blue Bulls, he also played for the Southwestern District Eagles. He was an exceptional player, and a lot of people thought that he would grow into this rugby sports career and become as legendary as his dad was. But then at the age of 24, Joseph completely went off the radar. He retired, according to some, but most people did not hear from him from that point going forward. His father claims that Joseph had an injury that ended his career at this point, and so he started studying IT, which he was passionate about, and he was very dedicated to his studies. But around this time he started experiencing some mental health issues, so he was going in and out of hospital, going from hospital to hospital, and nothing was working because Joseph did not want treatment. He did not accept that he had mental health issues, and so every time they would put him on medication, he would take the medication, but later he would stop taking the medication. So it was kind of a struggle that they were going through as a family, and this didn't come out until after Joseph was arrested. So a lot of people just kind of questioned that, and his father stated that they just wanted to keep everything under wraps. They wanted to keep everything to themselves as a family because of the stigma that surrounds mental health and mental health issues, which is a valid point. I am not saying that he was being truthful, nor am I saying he was not telling the truth, but there is a stigma that surrounds mental health issues, and more has to be done in order to destigmatize mental health issues, in order for us to be able to talk about mental health and mental health issues more freely, so that we can also provide help to other people. Because I think that a lot of people also don't accept when they have mental health issues, again because of the stigma that surrounds the whole issue of mental health and mental health issues. But not to go down a different route, let's get back to the story. So at this point, Joseph is still with his family. They're going through a lot. And he had moved actually from Pretoria to Durban to live with his mother. But not a lot is known about Joseph from 2001 or 2 when he stopped playing for the Blue Bulls up until 2011 when he started committing these horrific crimes. Not much is known, and I wish we knew more. I wish we had access to more information so that we can really try to like figure out what went wrong, what was the issue, what was going on, you know. I wish we had more access to the information, but unfortunately that is all we have on Joseph's background. So on the 28th of March, a large squad was put together by the police, and then they proceeded to the house where Joseph stayed. This was in the middle of the night, and so the group split into groups and surrounded the entire house just in case Joseph tried to escape, so that they'd be able to catch him. And also remember that this guy has been described as a big guy by pretty much everybody who has seen him. So police at this point are like, we're not taking any chances, let's surround this entire house. If he runs, we'll catch him. If he tries to escape, we'll catch him. We just need to make sure that we catch him and not kill him, because that way we'll never know if he's actually the perpetrator or not. So just as a precaution measure, they surrounded the entire house. Police approached the house, knocked on the door, but nobody was coming to the door, and there was no word coming from inside the house. And granted, this was in the middle of the night, so maybe the people may have been sleeping, but they heard nothing at all from inside the house. And there was a light that was on in the basement, so they were just like, are we being ignored? So then they approached the basement, and the police yelled through the basement window, and I'm assuming they said something along the lines of, you know, police open up or something. But that's when this big man opened up the door to the basement, and he had apparently filled up the entire doorway. That is how huge he was. So he opened the door, and voila, there he was, Joseph Ntshongwana. So he was about 184 centimeters tall, which is about 6'1", and he also weighed 95 kg, which is close to 210 pounds. So you can kind of get an idea of how big he is. And I know that in some countries, you know, being 6'1" is not really a big deal because a lot of people there are tall. But I think in Southern Africa, that is definitely a big deal. You significantly stand out. We are able to point out that there was a big man, a large man, standing on the corner if you're standing by the corner, because 6'1" is something that's not usual around here. So yeah, he was just tall, muscular, and large by all accounts. But he fully complied despite all the police's fears, and he was placed under arrest. But police also noted that he was actually so big that they couldn't use the regular handcuffs to cuff his hands behind his back, and so they had to use leg irons in order to handcuff him behind his back. From his physique alone, police just knew that they had their man, because I mean, a lot of people were saying, hey, it's this large man, he's so big, he's a big black man. So police just thought that they had their guy. They knew that they had their guy. But of course, they had to search the house and make sure that they gather enough evidence to convict him, because the court is not going to convict him simply because a lot of people said it was a big black guy. It could be literally any other big black guy. So yeah, they had to search his house and find as much evidence that they could use against him as possible. So as Joseph was still being handcuffed and I guess, you know, being read his rights and all that, one of the police officers started alerted others of a foul smell that was coming from the corner of the house. So that's when Officer Nadu and Colonel Gray dropped whatever it is that they were doing, and they walked towards this corner to investigate what the foul smell was, or what was causing this foul smell. So at the corner of the house there was a dog kennel, but there was no dog, and inside they could see that there was something that was peeking from a plastic bag, and it looked like an axe. So they seized that axe, and in fact there was quite a lot of things that were seized in this tiny dog kennel. So apparently, as they were approaching, this dog kennel just smelled like rotting, decaying meat. And the axe that they found actually had some blood on it and some pieces of flesh, which was later confirmed to be human flesh. So I guess that's what was causing the foul smell. But that was not all that they found. They also found some shoes. They found some blood soaked clothes, and they also found a yogurt container, which they didn't know what it was for. It didn't seem to have any blood on it, but they still had to seize any and everything. And this yogurt container will make sense later on. They also seized the orange plastic bag that was found with the X in it. So as I mentioned, Joseph was living with his mom in this house, and his mom later came down from, I guess she was upstairs. She later came down and met the police, and the police told her everything. They told her they're placing her son under arrest on suspicion of being, you know, a multiple murderer. They basically told her everything. But they said that the mom's reaction was rather odd. The mother did not seem shocked at all. Instead, she was, you know, she was pretty calm. She was taking in everything calmly. She wasn't overreacting as you would expect most people to. Some would even break down, start crying, be hysterical. But this mother was chilled. She was relaxed. She was not overreacting at all. And so police informed her that, hey, we're going to have to search your house to seize anything, any kind of evidence that we find. And that's when the mom told them that they need to search her room first because she wants to go back to sleep. She has work the next day, which is also odd in and of itself, because it's just weird. Like, why is it that the only thing in your mind at that point is just, you know, going back to sleep because you have work tomorrow? You're not worried about what you're going to do to help your son get himself out of this mess. You're not worried about all the people that your son have killed. You're just worried about going back to sleep. And my theory is she must have suspected, even if she didn't know exactly what Joseph was getting up to, she must have suspected that something sinister was happening. I mean, there was a foul smell at the corner of your house. You must have smelled that, and you must have perused or gone through all the items in there, and you must have seen something. But I guess I'm not accusing her of anything. I'm just saying maybe she just had a feeling that something was up with her son. Something of this nature, something as sinister as this. But anyway, police searched Joseph's room, and at first it didn't really appear suspicious, so they went to his bathroom and it was spick and span. It was clean, but they noted that there were a lot of bottles of Handy Andy and some bleach bottles. And also when they brought in the cadaver dog just sat in the room, and that was a cause for concern. So for those who don't know, a cadaver dog is trained to detect the scent of death, or rather the smell of death, and they're usually used in homicide investigations or missing people investigations. And if a cadaver dog stops, this could be an indication that it has detected the scent or the smell of death. And so when this particular cadaver dog stopped in the middle of the bathroom, it was a cause for concern, and police knew that something was up with that bathroom. So when this happened, police called in some forensics to spray some luminol all over the place, and like magic, all of the bathroom's hidden secrets were revealed. So luminol, again, if you don't know, is a chemical often used in homicide investigations. It is a water-based solution that is capable of detecting blood that has been diluted up to 10,000 times. So even if you wash it 10,000 times, luminol is going to expose you. Once it comes in contact with blood, it turns the blood into a glowy pale blue color. So yeah, police sprayed this all around the bathroom, and like I said, all the secrets came out. There was blood everywhere in that bathroom. There was some blood on the taps, there was some blood on the sink, there was some blood in the shower, on the walls of the shower, on the bathtub, on the mat. There was blood everywhere. You could literally see where he held the taps to open them, and it looked like he had been holding onto the sink as he was opening the tap. So you could also see that mark on the sink where he was holding the sink. You could also see a big footprint on the mat, showing that maybe the mat had been washed down, but he had stepped on some blood and then stepped on the mat. You could also see some blood on the bathtub. Maybe he sat down in the bathtub and so he held onto the walls. And then the bathtub was those bathtubs where it's like a bathtub and a shower in one. So there were also some blood splatters on the wall. And this is probably because as you're showering, the bloody water must will obviously kind of get on the wall, and so you could also see that. You could see literally everything. There was blood all over that speak and span bathroom. In the bedroom, they also found some items that are important to mention. They found some blood-stained clothes, seized them. They found some tablets. Some had been used, some had not been used. They seized them. They also found multiple pairs of tekkies, but one particular pair stood out because it's one pair, but they didn't look identical. So one of the shoes had a toe cap still intact and the other shoe was missing a toe cap. So again, they seized them. They took some pictures of these items first, of course, before seizing them. But despite the police's search of the entire premise and going around trying to find everything that they could to try and nail this man, there was no silver car at all. There was like literally no silver car at all in the yard. So they had to find the silver car because that's the car that everybody has been mentioning. The car was later found. It wasn't found that late. I think it was found the next day or something. It had actually been repossessed. So it had some damage to the back. And so the repossessors had not yet messed with any of the evidence in the car because they were waiting for some assessors to come and assess the damage that had been caused to the car. So police were actually able to get as much evidence from the car as possible, and as expected, the car also had a lot of blood on it, and they actually found 2 sets of blood in the car, and it was confirmed that those 2 sets of blood belonged to Paulos and Simon, so his last 2 victims. After his arrest, police also confirmed that Joseph had no daughter. So all that mumbo jumbo about avenging his daughter who had been infected with AIDS, it was all just bullcrap, and the media fell for it. People fell for it and people supported him because of this fake story. And even though police didn't know why he had made up the story, he made it up and people ate it up, and it was all a lie. So after his arrest is when police found out that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I'm not sure, but I think maybe some of the tablets that were found at his home may have been treatment for schizophrenia, but of course I could be wrong. In a rather shocking turn of events, police received another call on the 1st of April reporting that another body, a 4th body, had been found in Yellowwood Park, 100 meters from Joseph's home. So of course at first people started panicking, people thinking, oh my gosh, police have the wrong person and this man is still out there killing. But it turned out that that was completely wrong because this body had been at an advanced stage of decomposition, which indicated that he had actually been killed long before the other 3 victims were found. So this was possibly Joseph's first victim. What tied Joseph to this murder was not only the close proximity to his home, but also that the missing toe cap from one of his tekkies was found next to this victim's body, and that's what tied Joseph to this murder. But unfortunately, this victim has never been identified, and to this day he remains a John Doe. Through further investigations, police were also able to find that Joseph actually had an open docket for a kidnapping and rape charge that had happened in December of 2010. So he had kidnapped this lady and held her captive at his home for 3 days, where he repeatedly sexually assaulted her over the course of those days, but luckily she managed to escape. So she claims that during this time Joseph would ask her things like, how is it like to sleep with a Xhosa man, and he also forced her to smear yogurt all over his body and lick it off. And this is what I meant when I said the yogurt container would make sense later on. So after the lady had laid charges against Joseph, his mother actually presented the police with his medical records, and that's how he managed to avoid arrest up until his apprehension in 2011. So he was acting strange all throughout his entire arrest, and I'm not going to be able to go through every single thing that he did, but just to go through a few. Firstly, during the identification process, so while he was part of the lineup and the witnesses had to pick him out, the first witness pointed at him, and then he started acting weird. So he fell to the floor, he started acting hysterical, and he also went to the corner, curled up in the corner, and started speaking in tongues. So police had to stop the whole thing, but paramedics later said that there was nothing wrong with it. So basically it was all an act, and it was just like some sort of delay tactic. And also during one of his very first court appearances, he refused to enter the dock and he actually started howling, and apparently he had also soiled his pants. So I guess he was kind of like building onto his defense. He was trying to make it seem more credible, I guess. So he was charged with 4 counts of murder, 1 count of rape, a count of kidnapping, attempted murder, and assault. His trial began on the 19th of November 2012, and as expected, he raised mental illness as a defense. So I'm pretty sure you're aware of this already if you're watching this type of content, but just for some of y'all who may not be aware, when people commit these crimes or any crime at all involuntarily due to mental illness, or during a period where they're not lucid enough to comprehend and understand everything that they're doing, as well as understand the consequences of their action, they lack what is called criminal capacity. So basically, you don't have the criminal capacity to be convicted. You cannot be held criminally liable, mainly because you are not mentally sound during the commission of the crime. But this means that the defense would have to establish that the accused was not mentally sound during the commission of the crime. There are a lot of technicalities that go into establishing this and raising this as a defense, as with any other procedure, any other legal procedure, but I hope that I broke it down in a way that is easier to comprehend. So the prosecution had a lot of witnesses, including the rape victim and all the other witnesses to the crimes, and they also had 3 psychiatrists who were testifying against the accused. The defense's witness in this regard was Professor Gangert, who testified that Joseph was suffering from what he called a delusion disorder. So basically he said that these delusions, they came fast, and the affected person would be aggressive, violent, and sometimes homicidal, and that this person may not be able to remember what happened during these psychotic episodes and was therefore not criminally liable, or therefore didn't have the criminal capacity. To break it down further, what he was saying was basically that Joseph killed these people during a psychotic episode and he did not remember doing it. But his actions contradicted the allegations that he did not remember what he was doing or what he did, and that he did not fully comprehend what he was doing, because firstly, every time a witness would show up, Joseph would flee from the scene. Secondly, with the rape victim, she testified that as she was held captive, Joseph would always cover her mouth whenever somebody knocked on the door to prevent her from screaming or making a sound that will alert the other person. And then also he kept souvenirs, he kept trophies from these crimes. So how can somebody who does not remember doing these things keep the trophies for a crime that you don't remember committing? And also he cleaned up after himself, which clearly shows that he has some level of comprehension as to what he was doing, and he also knew that what he was doing was wrong, but he kept doing it over and over again. But anyway, on the 19th of December 2014, which also happened to be a day after my birthday, he was found guilty of all the 9 charges. So he was found guilty of the rape, the murders, the assault, the kidnapping, and the attempted murder. The judge stated that the defense failed to establish on a balance of probabilities that Joseph lacked the necessary criminal capacity due to his mental illness. He also dismissed the amnesia claims, stating that loss of memory after the fact is not a defense so long as the accused was mentally lucid during the necessary times, during the relevant times. He was handed down 5 life sentences for the 4 charges of murder and 1 count of rape, and then he was given an additional 14-year sentence collectively for the kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder. He has since made several appeals, which were all rejected. And with that, justice was served. I hope that his victims and the families of his victims, both living and deceased, are healed. I hope that they're healing. I hope that they're well and happy, and I hope that everything is going well with them today. The Bible says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." And so I hope that the good Lord will heal them and be with them now and forevermore. But that is all I have on today's case. I mostly relied on the information that I got from this amazing Showmax documentary. I forgot its name, but I'll leave it on the screen. It's so good, you guys. You should probably watch it. You should run and go watch it right now. And Showmax, keep these coming because I love them. I absolutely love them. Please feel free to comment any additional information that you may have, that you may know, and also feel free to comment down your thoughts, theories, and opinions on this case, but please remember to keep them respectful. And if you enjoy this type of content, or at the very least find it intriguing and insightful, please consider liking this video and also subscribe for more. Bye.